Why do I feel like this? What's happening to me? Oh, oh, oh. Am I ready? Ain't no doubt. Am I ready? What you talking about? Am I ready?
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Steph Mindset Mentor podcast. This is episode number 5, and today I've got a really special guest on. I met Vanessa in Costa Rica. We connected when I was down there, and she's just such a beautiful energy. And I reached out and asked if she wanted to do a podcast, which I'm really excited about. So, Vanessa Kristina, she's so much in human form. She's a mystic, a ceremony priestess, a light worker, and she's so much more. And we are going to discuss the topic of shadow work today. And I know a lot of people have been, diving into shadow work, and some people don't know what it is. And there's just lots to know about it. So, Vanessa is a great person to speak on this. So, this is Vanessa, and yay! I'm so glad. So, I'm filming during night and Vanessa's in America, so that's why she's in the day. So if you're wondering why it looks different. But this is Vanessa. If you just want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Steph. I was just gonna make a comment. It's perfect, this light and dark. You're
Yeah.
filming at night. It's still light time over here, and it's it's so beautifully in theme.
I didn't
But
even
yeah,
think of that.
so thank you for that wonderful introduction, Steph. My
You're
name is Vanessa
welcome.
Kristina, and I am the founder of Mystic Monarch, which is my spiritual development business. And I guide people to living their authentic self and living their purpose. There's
Mhm.
various different tools that I use that incorporate in my counseling work. I work in the Akashic Records. I'm an
Okay.
astrologer. I also hold ceremonies, medicine ceremonies, temple work. So yeah, there's a lot under the branch that I cover, and ultimately, like, I'm really passionate about guiding people to live in their authenticity with who they are at soul level.
Yeah, amazing. And that's kind of what connected us in Costa Rica, wasn't it? It
Yeah.
was it was just an instant kind of connection, and when I seen that you were into all that kind of stuff, and that was kind of thing I'm into, and we just got chatting, and we just had this kind of deep connection based on that kind of bond, and yeah, but like definitely you need to come back on and do one about the Akashic Records because that's another thing that I
Yeah.
am super like want to know about. So yeah, so just like the first question I was just going to ask, just straight off the bat, just in case people don't know, what would you say and define as shadow work? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, in the simplest of terms, shadow
Mhm,
work is working on acknowledging, becoming aware of your shadows and
mhm,
integrating them into your life.
mhm,
So now I get that that can be a little like vague and confusing.
mhm,
Um, right? Because, like, well, what does a shadow? What does integration mean? What does embodiment mean?
mhm,
But really, shadow work is the process of bringing to light the stuff about you that you are not aware of. It's like
mhm.
the shadow parts of you, the bad parts of you, and bringing them to light, acknowledging them, and choosing to not engage with these shadow aspects of yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good explanation. Yeah, like there's a quote I heard, and it's like the work you do in the dark will shine in the light, and I think that like summarizes shadow work like so well. When would you say that you knew that your journey with shadow work started? When did that kind of come about for you?
Oh, I love this question.
It's so different for everyone, isn't it? It's so
Yeah, it's kind of like hard for me to answer because I've always been a shadow worker. Like, I've
Mhm,
always been someone who I've always been committed to, like, developing myself, growing myself, being the best version of myself that I can be.
yeah.
And so I didn't know that it was called shadow work at the time, but I could recall moments or fights or arguments in college with my friends, and me choosing the high road, or me like apologizing for getting defensive and then looking at my defensiveness and asking, is this serving me? So Yeah, it's like I was doing shadow work before I knew that shadow work was a
Yeah,
thing.
was a
And
thing.
that's kind of like really been my path. And we don't have to go too deep into like my path of becoming a light worker, but
Mhm,
that's always been a part of my journey. It's like
mhm.
my self-discovery journey has been more about realizing that I've always been the person that I want to be rather than changing who I am or how I'm showing up to like be someone better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
know that's so interesting. I think for me, like, it actually just hit me, like, all at once, which was very overwhelming. That it wasn't so much like I kinda was aware of these things, like, I wasn't really aware of until I started digging deeper and doing, counselling, coaching, therapies and things like that, and really, like, digging into my past and realising, right, wow, this is repetitive behaviours that are happening and I'm not actually quite sure why, but the same thing keeps showing up and up and up and again in different people, in different situations. And then that's when I realized, like, one day I was just like, right, I need to address this.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, you and I connected over one of these patterns that you were in.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, having a conversation with you being like, "Well, when are you gonna do this differently?" And that really is the shadow work. The shadow work is, like, when you're actually doing the work is
Mhm.
when you are choosing new. Uh,
New. Yeah,
you're
good. That's
choosing a
really
new story. But I wanna back up here a little bit, Steph, so that we could kinda just, like, lay down the foundation of shadow work because I
yeah.
see shadow work as a two-part process.
Mhm.
Um, so if you're cool with that, if you're
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
so yeah, the first step, of shadow work is the shadow part, right? So
Mhm.
it's becoming aware of the shadow. So if we think of, what a shadow is,
Mhm.
it's the it's the darkness that is cast by our light, which is kind of
Yeah.
like what the quote, what
Yeah.
I forget what the words are, but it's by delving into the darkness that you
Definitely.
begin to illuminate light. And the reality is that wherever we go, we'll always have a shadow. And the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow, right? And
Mm.
we're talking like physically speaking, right? You shine a really
Mhm.
big light, you can cast a really huge shadow. And so what this means on a more like metaphoric level or energetic level, the shadow is the parts of ourselves that we are not aware of. It's the parts
Mhm.
that we can't see. It's the parts where the light of God or the light of the universe or the good
Mhm.
that we can't see. And so the first part is becoming aware of the shadow. It's kind of like being like looking back and be like, oh, I'm casting a shadow. And that shadow aspect parts of us, they're like, it's all the ways that our ego shows up. So when we're not embodying our light, when we're not shining our light, and we're moving from this more egoic place, that's our shadow
Mhm.
selves,
Yeah.
right? So examples of this could be like when we get defensive, right? When someone says like, hey, that thing that you did yesterday, like it made me feel this way. And
Mhm.
you take it personally, like, well, that's your problem. It's not my problem. How you take it, like, right? We get defensive, we get combative, we get
Mhm.
reactive. It's like repeating, it's making the same choices over again that keep us in cycles that aren't serving us. Like the
Mhm.
best example of this, and like everyone listening to this, I'm not sure when you're going to publish this, but we're right on the heels of Venus going direct. So we had a huge highlight on relationships, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the most prevalent pattern is like being stuck in relationships or in a relationship that isn't really serving us. Will we just
Mhm.
keep staying in it? And someone who isn't aware of their shadow won't even acknowledge that they're in a toxic relationship, right?
Yeah.
Will
Yeah.
continue defending the partner that they're in because they're so in love. So the first step is really becoming aware of what it is that the choices that you are making, the behavior that you are showing up in that isn't serving you, that
Yeah.
isn't in your highest good, that isn't really coming from your authentic self.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, and that piece, that part of shadow work, that first part can be really challenging for a lot of people. right?
Mm-hmm.
That like willingness. It takes a lot of courage to admit that we're not
Oh,
perfect.
definitely.
You know,
Definitely.
we have a
Yeah.
shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's yeah, perfectly put. And I think being aware is like the first step, isn't it? It's having that awareness so that you know,
Yeah.
like this is what's coming up for me, this is what I need to deal with. But like, what would you say to people that maybe have this, the kind of awareness but don't really know how to start off their shadow work journey? What
Yeah.
advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yeah, I just want to acknowledge that I like totally spilled water as I was drinking. So, which is actually great. You know, it's a great segue into like, yeah, one of sometimes the first step is just acknowledging that. It's like, yeah, like I just spilled water, or you know, like I did this thing that like I realized wasn't really healthy for me, but I did it, you know, and sometimes just giving it a
Yeah,
voice
yeah.
that can be so scary and so vulnerable
Mhm.
to admit, you know, so like just sharing it
Yeah.
um is a great first step into the second part of shadow work, or the work part of shadow work,
Mhm.
which is what you're asking, like how do we
Mhm.
actually integrate these
Yeah,
shadow parts of
yeah.
ourselves. And yeah, so it's important to again like give it voice.
Mhm.
And this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because it could be so challenging to make a new choice, to access the courage and the strength to
Mhm.
do something different, to rewrite the old story, write a new story, break
Mhm.
away from the toxic patterns and cycles.
Yeah.
And the best advice that I could give someone is seek guidance.
Mhm.
You know, seek
Mhm.
guidance within yourself, seek guidance outside of yourself. Like, how can, you know, there's so many different tools out there between like meditation, you know, tapping,
Mhm.
parts work. There's different little tools that you can do to
Yes.
allow yourself to make those new choices. But it
Mhm.
really just boils down to choosing new,
Yeah.
right? So the person that you are with isn't, it's they're holding you back, they're not
Mhm.
serving you, they're abusive. Once you
Mhm.
become aware of that and you make the decision to leave them, then it becomes the process of actually making the choice to leave them, actually leaving them.
Mhm.
And you can do all of the energy work you want, all of the meditation, tapping into all the tools, but it really just boils down to leaving the person.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it really like it's about taking a moment to stop,
Mhm.
pause, take a breath, become
Mhm.
aware that there's a shadow part of you coming up.
Mhm.
And instead of, you know, if you can get to that point where you realize, like, okay, let me give an example. Someone sends you a really triggering text message. Let's say this, you know, abusive partner that you're with sends you a text message and they're insulting you and they're just blaming you for the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And naturally, because we're human beings, that message is going to be received in a way that brings up a lot of triggers and emotions within us,
Yeah.
right? And the first initial instinct is going to be to react and maybe attack back and use mean words and point the finger at them, and right?
Mhm.
So if you can get to the point where you realize that, wow, what I'm about to do is a reactive behavior,
Yeah.
you can take a pause. If you can get to that point, which is the part one,
Yes.
becoming aware of
Yes.
the
Yes.
take a breath. And if you don't have it within you, if your system isn't regulated enough
Mhm.
to respond to that text message in a loving,
Mhm.
compassionate, strong, courageous way, then take space.
Yeah, don't send it.
Yeah, like that's the best thing that we can do is like take space from our shadows, take moments to like, okay, ask yourself, why is this triggering me?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I allowing this to affect me? And
Mhm.
not from this place of like, oh, this shouldn't be affecting me, but rather asking myself, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
What is the root of this? What do I
Mm-hmm.
really want?
Yeah.
What do I really want to communicate? Right? There's a lot of different parts to the inquiry process.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're ready, right? When your nervous system is regulated and you're ready to come back to the conversation from a uh more resourced place,
Yeah.
then the work would be like, instead of attacking and blaming, you could either uphold a boundary and say like, hey, I don't appreciate you being
Mm-hmm.
spoken to in this way and I'm not going to respond, or you can choose to respond in a loving way.
Yeah.
So yeah, space is a
Yeah.
really big one.
Yeah. That's yeah, beautifully put. And just even hearing you simplify it like that, like it's the way of choosing you, like that simply just even put like that, it's like it's that can be so hard, isn't it? Because a lot of people, including myself before when I was still working through my stuff, it's almost as if you can't let go of that because that's your identity. You don't know yourself any other way. You're this
Mhm.
defensive person. You don't know how to act. You don't know how to take a breath. You don't know how to regulate your nervous system. All of these things, you just feel so overwhelmed and like it's so hard to actually, get from there to there, isn't it? Like it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, like
You
shedding that
know,
old version.
as you're speaking, what was coming through for me was, shadow work is the process of choosing the best version of you
Yeah,
at all times.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really a journey of self and of
Hmm.
choosing self and of
Hmm.
putting myself first,
Yeah.
um, but not in an egotistical, selfish kind of way.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah. No, totally, yeah.
that right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
no.
like, and then it's so important to just distinguish, because like so many people call themselves shadow workers, and here's the thing, like, if someone is truly a shadow worker, you'll rarely ever see their shadows.
Yeah.
Or you'll see their shadows, you call them out on their shadows, and they receive the feedback and love you and appreciate you so much more. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's really where the shadow work is. There's
Yeah.
so many people out there who are like, oh, like I'm a shadow worker, I'm a shadow worker. And all they're doing is just spewing and spilling and
Mhm.
vomiting their shadows all over people and calling themselves a shadow worker because, like,
Yeah.
well, I acknowledge that this is my power, this is my gift. And like, yeah, I'm in my
Oh my
shadows, but
God.
like it's catalyzing you and it's affecting you a certain way, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
baby, that's not shadow work. That's
Yeah.
step one. Like, beautiful that you're aware of your shadows. But if you
Mhm.
continue, like, that's even worse. Once you become aware of your shadow, if you
Mhm.
consciously choose to engage in that shadow behavior, knowing that this is shadow behavior, now you just become a really toxic person.
Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's almost just from you're operating from that place of ego, but you think you know better, so it's even worse. And
Yeah.
these people are trying to coach you,
And there's
and
so
that's
much of this,
so
Steph,
much.
like, so much of this in the spiritual and self-development world,
Yeah.
right? There's just a lot of like ego yeah, and in this
Mhm. Yeah.
in this realm
Mhm.
where people are just like, yeah, just because I said so, like this is the way and this is the path. And yeah, it can be dangerous.
Yeah. No, definitely. I know, and I think and when it all boils down to it, really what you said is perfect. Like all you need to really do is be aware, take some space, take the pause. That's why I'm so big on the breath work and meditation because that has changed everything for me. Like I don't know if you remember in Costa Rica, I actually bought the little bracelet that said breathe on it.
Oh, I don't
And I
remember.
had it I had it on me literally until like a month ago and I've lost it and I'm devastated. But it's just such a good reminder, like when you are feeling like that, just to take a breath and come from a more regulated place because that is your higher self. And your higher self is wants you to come from a place of love and, not act from your shadow. And I just think it's once you kind of find that rhythm, it's beautiful. You draw more aligned people to you. You
Mhm.
can you can like let go of things with more grace. Like things don't have to be so hard. Like I think people create so much suffering for themselves, don't they?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
really do. God, we're addicted to suffering. We really
Like,
are as a collective, and it really boils down to the choices that we make. That's
mhm.
really what it is.
Yeah.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about Costa Rica and um, without getting too into like that trip, but there was a
Mhm,
situation that arose
mhm.
where we witnessed someone being it's like this aspect of like not seeing the shadow, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like maybe seeing the shadow but ignoring it.
yeah.
And it's just like it's fascinating because so many people live in this way where it's just like they do not want to
You don't want to
hear it, they
acknowledge.
don't want to see it. Because
Mhm,
the thing is, once you see it, once you see your darkness,
mhm.
integrating that darkness, which is the part of making choosing new,
Yeah,
right? It's seeing like, oh, like I really want to beat this person up, but I'm going to choose to walk away instead.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that process is it's almost like you're tearing yourself apart
yeah, yeah.
because you are integrating a new identity.
And your
And
identity, yeah,
you're right, that integration process is really hard. Like it feels like a lot for the system and it's really
yeah,
painful.
yeah.
So it's just so much easier to ignore and pretend like
Of
we don't have a
course, of course. That's actually what I was saying to a friend earlier on. Like, it's so much easier for people in that state to blame, to shut down, to not listen, to shift, perspectives onto you and make you out to be, but like you can, but all you can do is like guide people. You can try and help support people, but if they're not willing to see, you know,
Yeah.
their shadow, then there's really not much you can do. And I
And then it
remember that situation.
Yeah, and it could be really frustrating because we love them, right? If it's someone who we're close to, or like a
Yeah.
really close friend, or get a partner, or even family members. And then
Yeah.
this is
Oh, God,
where
yeah.
our shadow work comes in, right? When we realize that, like, okay, so my highest self wants people around me who are integrating their shadows, who are actively desiring to work on themselves to better themselves the same way that I am,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you have someone that you love dearly because you have so much history with them,
Mm,
um, like a family member, you've spent your whole life with them, and you see that like no matter how hard you try, you just can't get them to see how they are showing up in a certain way, then your shadow work becomes putting yourself first, your higher self first,
yeah.
and choosing to not give that person any more of your energy, or
Mhm.
regulating how much energy you're actually giving them.
God.
Because
And that's
it's
so hard when
so
it's your
hard.
family. Like I'm literally going through that right now with family, and it's so hard. And it's been years and years and years. And it's exhausting and draining. And you just get to the point where you just say, I can't participate in this anymore. I just have to step back. And I think after Costa Rica, that made me realize so much. I was like, wow, a lot of people were there to sort of, as you said something to me that it like really struck a chord. You said that Puerto Viejo brings out the shadows in people, or you said people
Uh-huh,
go there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
I
it's
did
like a
say that.
vortex. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, is this why I picked this place? Like subconsciously, like I don't even know, but it definitely was work there I needed to do, and it enlightened me so much. But yeah, it's so hard when it's someone you love or a friend, and you just have to take that stance and either take a step back or remove yourself completely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody says shadow work was easy because it's definitely not. It's
It's
horrible. Yeah,
Yeah, shadow
it's
work
rough.
is not fun.
No.
I say there was this motto that I had in 2020, which was like sometimes having too much awareness is a bad thing. If you're too
Spot on.
aware of what you, but you're not doing anything about it, like that could be really challenging as well.
It
Uh,
drives you crazy.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's
it does
overwhelming.
take a lot of work. It takes, a lot of different tools to break cycles, to break patterns. And when
Yeah.
it comes to family, we're talking generational trauma,
Yes.
We're
Yep.
talking
Yep.
about like lifetime after lifetime, lineage after lineage after lineage of the same type of behavior, the same type of pattern being perpetuated and repeated.
Mhm.
And it's so much harder to break that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And then,
think
yeah,
oh
go
no,
ahead.
you go ahead.
Yeah, and
You
I wanted to add this before yeah, one of, I think like the best piece of advice that I could give to like integrate and incorporate shadow work into our lives is
Yeah.
being open to feedback,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
open to receiving feedback from other people,
Yeah.
and also being open to giving feedback to other
Yes.
people of what,
Yes.
like, the parts of them that you're observing that you don't really
Mm-hmm.
like having the courage to voice that, and also having
Mm-hmm.
the courage to be open to receive when people
Open
say like,
communication.
hey, this thing that you did I didn't really like. And then remembering, right, that the feedback that you receive is for you to integrate.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to accept as truth what other people
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
because something that someone says could absolutely totally be only a projection and
Yeah.
not have it be centered in any layer of truth.
Yeah.
The real beauty of shadow work and bringing awareness and then choosing new is being open to seeing how you show up in the world, and how you show up affects others.
Ah, that's brilliant. Yeah, no, beautiful. Because yeah, it's hard to distinguish a projection from perhaps a truth. So how would you tell the difference? How would you know the difference?
Hmm. So this is where the meditation and the self-awareness and the being with self and the really getting to know yourself comes in.
Mhm.
Um, you'll know when you get to a point in your journey, you'll know. You'll
Yeah.
know what's projection, you'll know what's truth. And the reality is stuff that there's always a projection and there's always truth in everything. You know, if
Hmm.
something is showing up in your field, like energy is energy is energy is energy is energy. If it's showing up in your field, is because there's a resonance there. So
Yeah.
the more courageous, the more brave you are to look at what is like the little, even if it's just a tiny, tiny, itty bitty little thread of
Hmm.
truth in the
Yeah.
big ass projection that someone is directing at you,
Yeah.
like that's the shadow work. Being open
Yeah.
to being like, okay, where can this be true in my life?
Yeah. Where have they gotten this
Be
from?
honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know something like when you do sit with yourself and you do start to master that kind of time with yourself, like you do realize that you actually do hold the answers to everything you want to know. It's wild, like, and like I hate to say it, like this is terrible, but I've only started properly journaling in the past few months, and oh my God. I'm like, why did I not start this sooner? Like, why? I always had a gratitude journal, but the actual just writing your thoughts out on paper and not judging yourself for what you've wrote, being completely honest, and then actually getting it out onto paper, like getting it out of your head onto paper, like the lightness you even feel from that, and then looking at what has came up for you in that day and not judging it and being completely accepting of it and being able to actually like, right, here's all the thoughts that just vomited out of me and let's like try and make sense of them. Like
Yeah,
journaling along with meditation, I think is a great way to sort of attack the shadow work.
yeah.
I have like another question for you as well, because I know that you do ceremonies with medicine, don't you?
What was that? What about medicine?
You do medicine ceremonies?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am going to my first ever ceremony in a couple of weeks, which I'm very excited about, and it's a mushroom ceremony. So,
Beautiful.
what would you say? Would you say psychedelics are good for the shadow work process?
Absolutely. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that is like that's like the shadow work, especially when you're working with um earthy medicines like psilocybin,
Mm.
mushrooms, you know, they're in the ground, they're in the
Yeah.
shadows. And the mushrooms,
Mhm.
like they're connected to the larger mycelial network that is spread out all around the earth. Like our whole entire earth is connected through a
Ah,
whole network of the
yeah.
mycelium.
Yeah.
And you have little mushrooms that spread out like into the light, but they are definitely shadow workers. So
Oh wow, that's so cool. Yeah, and the lady that's coming to facilitate it, she said something so beautiful. She said ayahuasca is like the grandmother of the medicine, and the mushrooms are the playful childlike
Hmm.
side.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really nice. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And what would you say to people that are maybe like, because I'm trying to kind of spread that kind of word to people.
Hmm.
Um, and I know a lot of people that have done it themselves and like swear by it. And what do you think like the psychedelics can do for your mind in this process to help?
The biggest thing that psychedelics can do and have done for me is bringing awareness,
Mm,
which again, like for some people, they don't like they're just so
yeah.
blocked and not wanting to see the truth. And actually, when people have bad, I don't believe in bad trips at
No,
all.
me neither. No.
When people have, and I think we actually talked about this in Costa Rica, when
Yeah.
people, experience a bad trip is because there's something there that they're not wanting to look at. There's medicine there, there's healing work that gets to be done, and they're just not ready to face it, or they're ready to face it because it's showing up, but they don't want to face it. So then
Hmm.
they just have this like battle, this inner battle that happens. But,
Yeah.
and psychedelics are a really powerful tool of bringing awareness to what's there, to bringing
Yeah.
awareness to what's in the shadow, uh,
Hmm.
and opening up. Psychedelics have this really beautiful way of connecting us to ourselves, to each other, to source, to
Yeah.
this sense of oneness, and
Mhm.
and it opens us up. That's why a lot of people can
Mhm.
have these like awakenings with psychedelics where they realize, like, they come out of their experience and they're like, whoa, like everything that I knew before is just not true, and like now I
Yeah,
know it's true.
yeah.
And yeah, so that's like the first step of psychedelics, and then when you
Mhm.
have a deeper relationship with them, you can really start working with the different types of medicine and ask questions.
Oh,
Uh,
wow, okay.
Really granular with your intentions around
Mhm.
what it is that you are seeking to understand or see, or like what was there something that you haven't yet seen that you want to see, that you want to be shown. So setting
Mhm.
very specific intentions going into any ceremony and anything in life, really, but
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
medicine ceremonies is really potent.
Oh, amazing. No, I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes up, and that's exactly I'm the same. I'm just like, whatever needs to come up, and we'll deal with it then and there, and I welcome it all.
Beautiful.
But yeah, but no, thank you so much for your time, and I think we've covered so many questions as well that a lot of people have been asking too. And is there anything else you'd like to say on the shadow work before we go?
I feel really complete. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
no, perfect.
we could spend hours talking about shadow work,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, well, I'll definitely get you back on for the Akashic Records because that's something that I'm really interested in. But where can people find you if they want to see your work and what you do?
yeah, people can find me on Instagram, Mystic Monarch. So that's gonna be Mystic with a K, Monarch with a K. I'm sure you can pop it on
Yeah,
in
I'll
the
pop it on
description
for you.
box. Yeah, just shoot me a DM if you are interested in working with me. I do
Yeah.
have a special course that I'm putting together. I don't want to speak too much into it quite just yet, but something that I've really stepped into working, and something that I'm currently really passionate about is womb healing and
Oh,
guiding womb
amazing.
bearers to get really in
Oh,
tune with their womb cycle and healing through the womb. And ultimately, I mean, the yeah, everything is stored in the womb. All
oh
this
my God.
information. So once
Mhm.
we really tap into the power that exists within our wombs and begin to live in alignment with the medicine that our wombs deliver us every single day of our lives, we can unlock
Oh,
so much, including yeah, healing from the physical
oh,
symptoms.
that's amazing. Is this like an online or in person?
It's gonna be an online thing.
I'm coming. I'm gonna come. I'm gonna come. I'll be there.
I love it. Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
share information with you when I'm
Perfect.
ready to launch.
Amazing.
But yeah, that's coming.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll check out Vanessa's Instagram because I checked it out while we were in Costa Rica and I was just blown away by her content. It's just amazing. So yeah, amazing, amazing woman. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll get
Steph,
you back on
thank
another time.
you so
You're
much.
welcome.
This has been super fun, and I'm excited to come back. And it's such a beautiful time to see your face,
You too. I know
real
I've missed
time, yeah, and reminisce on Costa
I
Rica.
know. I know we need to properly catch up, but yes, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone continuously watching and all your feedback. It's been really good. So we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Vanessa.
Yay.
Bye.